Musk felt a chill run through him. This was no longer just about erratic weather patterns or climate change. It was about something far more deliberate. Someone, or something, was actively manipulating the environment. And the consequences could be disastrous. "We need to act fast," Musk said, his voice steady despite the tension building inside him. "Keep digging, Sarah, and let me know the second you find anything that could explain this." After hanging up, Musk turned to Gwen Shotwell, who had been poring over documents and making calls to various government agencies. She looked up from her desk, her face grim. "Any luck?" Musk asked, though he already had a sinking feeling about what she was going to say. "We've got some eyes on it," Gwen replied, "but the government's hesitant to get involved. They don't want to stir panic until we have concrete proof. It's like they don't want to acknowledge how big this could be. I'm pushing them, but they're waiting for more evidence." Musk's patience was running thin. Time was something they didn't have. Every day the fires raged. Every day they didn't know who or what was behind them. The situation became more dangerous. The world was already on edge with the climate crisis. This new development could send it into chaos. "I don't care what the government thinks. This is happening now, and we need to stop it. I'm not going to wait for concrete proof. I'm going to get it myself," Musk said, his voice steely. Gwen nodded. "I understand. Let's see what we can do." Just then, Andreas Zimmer called in. "Elon, I think you need to hear this," he said, urgency in his voice. "I've been diving into the satellite data, and I found something. There's a pattern, one that's eerily familiar." Musk sat up straight. "What are you talking about?" "It's a sequence. A calculated pattern in how these fires are spreading," Andreas explained. "And it's too close to be random. These fires aren't just a natural phenomenon. They're following a trajectory, almost as if someone is guiding them. There's some form of control here. It's subtle, but it's there." Musk felt his heart race. "What are you saying, Andreas? Are you telling me someone is intentionally setting these fires?" "I'm not sure yet, but the data suggests we're not dealing with an accident," Andreas replied. "There's something happening here that doesn't fit the usual wildfire model. It's like someone, or something, is using a type of environmental manipulation. The fires seem to follow an invisible path, like there's a map or a blueprint they're adhering to." It was supposed to be just another routine day for Elon Musk, a morning spent in the bustling offices of SpaceX, followed by a few meetings at Tesla, and perhaps a quiet evening reviewing data on Mars exploration. But today was different. The usual hum of activity was replaced with a sense of urgency, a tension Musk couldn't shake off. He sat at his desk, his fingers flying across the keyboard, reviewing satellite data for a new project. As he scanned the numbers, one set of data caught his attention. It was subtle at first, a blip in the data that seemed too insignificant to matter. But Musk's mind worked like a machine, always processing, always searching for patterns. Something about this blip didn't sit right with him. He zoomed in on the coordinates, his heart quickening as he realized it wasn't just any anomaly. It was a pattern that didn't match the normal spread of wildfires across the world. Musk leaned closer to the screen. The data wasn't showing a random distribution of fires. It was far more organized, almost as if someone or something was guiding their direction. He scanned over other regions that should have been unaffected by the wildfires. Yet, these small but unmistakable data points began to emerge, as though the fires were following a precise route. "What the hell?" Musk muttered under his breath. He was used to spotting anomalies in data, but this felt different. It was as if a force, an unknown force, was influencing these fires. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Musk's mind raced. Could it be something technological? Or was it something more sinister? There were too many questions and not enough answers. His phone buzzed on the desk, dragging him out of his thoughts. It was a message from his assistant, Greg. "Elon, you have a meeting with the Tesla team in 10 minutes. Are you ready?" Musk let out a sigh, his gaze lingering on the screen before replying, "Tell them I'll be there in 20. He stared at the data again, trying to make sense of it, but it was clear this was no ordinary wildfire season. Something was wrong. And Musk, always the visionary, couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stumbled onto something that no one else was seeing. But what if this discovery wasn't a fluke? What if the patterns he was observing weren't just coincidences? The implications of such a thing, wildfires engineered or influenced by forces unseen, could change everything. Could technology, his own technology, somehow be contributing to this? Or was something else at play, something larger than he could imagine? Musk leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen as the weight of the discovery settled in. He knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a wildfire season. It was a puzzle, one he had to solve. And if he was right, no one else had noticed it yet. The world had no idea what was coming. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk was about to dive into something bigger than anything he'd ever tackled before. Elon Musk had seen a lot of things in his life. Rocket launches that defied gravity, electric cars that raced toward a sustainable future, and even self-driving vehicles that had once seemed like science fiction. But today, as he sat in his private office at SpaceX, he felt a sense of unease wash over him. The hum of the day-to-day operations was there, of course, the buzz of engineers and technicians working tirelessly to push the limits of space exploration and technology. But for Musk, today was different. He sat in front of his computer, eyes scanning over the data streams coming in from the SpaceX satellites that monitored Earth's weather and environmental patterns. The numbers were what they always were: steady, reliable, boring. That was until his eyes caught something strange. A set of coordinates blinked in the corner of his screen. Musk's curiosity was piqued. At first glance, it seemed like just another wildfire somewhere in the world. The satellite data often picked up fires, but these fires didn't look right. They weren't following the usual chaotic paths. They weren't behaving as they should. The spread of the fires was almost too calculated. He clicked through the satellite images and zoomed in on the area where the fire data had pinged. As he studied the imagery, it became clear. These wildfires weren't following typical patterns. Usually, fires spread based on the winds, terrain, and dryness of the environment. But these? They seemed oddly organized, almost deliberate. They seemed to move in a direction that didn't make sense. His heart rate quickened. He refreshed the data and zoomed in on another fire zone, this time in a different part of the world. The same anomaly appeared. A wildfire, sure, but it wasn't acting like any wildfire he had ever seen before. There was something subtle but noticeable, that suggested these fires weren't just happening on their own. Musk's eyes narrowed. He wasn't just some engineer who happened to dabble in environmental science. He was someone who made it his business to see patterns where others saw noise. He'd learned long ago to trust his gut, and right now, his gut was telling him something wasn't right. "Elon, are you still with us?" A voice crackled over his office intercom, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was Greg, his assistant. Musk blinked, momentarily disoriented. "Yeah, I'm here. Give me a second." He turned his attention back to the screen, his mind racing. What if these weren't ordinary wildfires? What if something, or someone, was controlling them, guiding them? It wasn't just the spread that seemed odd. It was the timing, the intensity. This wasn't the usual pattern of fires that could be explained away by weather and climate change. Something larger was at play, something Musk couldn't yet explain. He quickly scrolled through other data sets from the past few weeks, looking for more anomalies. There it was again. Fires following unnatural paths, as if tracing a map that no one had drawn. His hands hovered over the keyboard. Could this be a sign of something more? An early warning system malfunction? A glitch in the satellite sensors? Or something far more ominous? Musk wasn't a man who usually got bogged down by doubts, but this was different. This didn't feel like a coincidence. The data was clear, but it didn't fit with anything he knew about wildfires. "Hey, Greg," Musk said, his voice tight. "Cancel the meeting with the Tesla team. I need to look at something." "Got it, Elon," Greg replied, his tone slightly concerned. "Everything okay?" "I don't know yet," Musk replied, "but it will be." Without another word, he pulled up a new set of satellite images, focusing on one of the regions that was currently being ravaged by wildfires in California. Musk's mind worked in overdrive. What if these fires were being manipulated, either through technology or some other unknown force? Could someone be using these fires as a cover for something else? It was a crazy thought, but Musk had learned that sometimes the most outlandish ideas were the ones that turned out to be true. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from his brother Kimball. "You coming over later? We need to talk." Musk stared at the message for a moment, but didn't respond. Right now, he had something far more pressing to focus on. Musk's fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up even more data, more satellite images, more fire maps. It wasn't long before a pattern began to emerge. The fires weren't simply random. They were connected in ways Musk couldn't quite explain. It was almost as if there were a blueprint, a guiding hand behind the chaos. His mind began to race. Could it be that the wildfires were somehow linked to technology he and others were developing? He knew that SpaceX, with its advanced satellite systems, could track the Earth in unprecedented detail. What if this technology was being used in ways no one had anticipated? He scrolled through the data again. This time, he pulled up the footage of SpaceX's Starlink satellites in orbit, looking for any anomalies. Could the satellites themselves be somehow involved? The thought seemed absurd, but Musk was not one to dismiss ideas simply because they didn't make sense at first glance. Musk leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of his discovery settle in. The implications of this were enormous, far beyond the scope of anything he had worked on before. The fires were becoming a global crisis, and if his suspicions were correct, they could be more than just a natural disaster. They could be a man-made one. What if no one else had noticed? What if the world was blind to the cause behind the fires, and he was the only one who could see it? Musk's heart raced. He was about to step into uncharted territory. He had to act, and he had to act fast. But before he could dive deeper into his investigation, his phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Gwynne Shotwell, the president of SpaceX. "Elon, you good? We've got an emergency board meeting in an hour. We need you here." He paused. "I'll be there in 20, Musk said. His voice was steady, but in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that what he was about to uncover would change everything. "Tell them I'll be there soon," he added, before ending the call. He stood up from his desk, pacing the room. The world didn't know it yet, but something far more significant than just wildfires was unfolding. And Elon Musk, the man who had dared to dream of a better future, might be the only one who could stop it. Elon Musk had always been driven by a sense of urgency, a need to challenge the status quo. It wasn't just ambition that propelled him forward. It was a deep-seated belief that he could change the world. The man who had founded PayPal, launched SpaceX, and revolutionized the electric car market was no stranger to taking risks. But the fire that burned inside him wasn't just about innovation. It was about solving problems. It was about survival. And now, as he sat in his office at SpaceX, looking over the mysterious wildfire data that had consumed his thoughts, he knew this was no ordinary challenge. It was a problem that needed solving, and Elon Musk wasn't one to let things go unsolved. Not when the future of the planet was at stake. The story of how Musk became the person he was today was a familiar one to those who followed his career. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, in 1971, he had always been a curious child. His interest in technology and innovation had begun early, sparking a lifelong obsession with understanding how things worked. He devoured books, exploring everything from science fiction to complex technical manuals. By the age of 12, he had taught himself computer programming and created a video game he sold for $500, his first taste of entrepreneurship. But his childhood wasn't all about intellectual pursuits. Musk's early years were marked by difficulty and isolation. His parents divorced when he was young, and he was often picked on by other kids for being different. It was this early adversity that helped shape Musk's relentless determination. He learned early that if he wanted to make a difference, he had to do it on his own terms. At 17, Musk moved to Canada to attend Queen's University, eventually transferring to the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. By the time he graduated, he had a clear vision of what he wanted to do. He believed that technology could not only change the world, but save it. And so he set out on his mission to do just that. But no one, not even Musk himself, could have predicted the immense hurdles he would face in his career. It wasn't enough to just invent new things. He had to convince the world to embrace them. SpaceX's early years were a constant uphill battle. Rockets failed, investors pulled out, and critics were quick to point out that a private company could never hope to compete with NASA's decades of experience. Tesla's story was no different. The electric car industry was riddled with skepticism, and Musk found himself fighting not only for his vision, but for his company's very survival. Yet, through it all, Musk had thrived. SpaceX had become the first privately funded company to send a spacecraft to the International Space Station, while Tesla had revolutionized the car industry with electric vehicles that combined performance with sustainability. These achievements were milestones, but Musk wasn't content to stop there. He had bigger dreams, dreams that now included making life multiplanetary and transitioning the world to renewable energy. It was these grand visions that had kept Musk moving forward, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. But his drive wasn't just about building rockets or electric cars. Musk had always been deeply concerned about the future of humanity. His worries were not just about technology, but about the planet itself. He had always been outspoken about climate change and its potential to destroy the world as we knew it. He had launched solar companies, advocated for carbon taxes, and spearheaded efforts to reduce humanity's dependence on fossil fuels. The question of the environment wasn't just an abstract issue to Musk, it was personal. As a father of several children, Musk often found himself thinking about the world they would inherit. Would they have a planet to live on? Or would they face a future of devastation brought on by environmental collapse? It was these concerns that had driven Musk's decision to dig into the data surrounding the wildfires that had recently caught his attention. While others were simply watching the fires burn from afar, Musk's mind was already searching for answers. He had seen enough of the world's problems to know that the situation was urgent, and he wasn't about to let a pattern in the data go unexplored, no matter how strange it seemed. Musk's closest allies knew this about him. They had seen firsthand the kind of drive that pushed him to pursue even the most far-fetched ideas. Take Gwynne Shotwell, for example. She was one of SpaceX's earliest hires and had been a key figure in the company's success. Their professional relationship was built on trust, but there was more to their bond than just business. Shotwell understood Musk's obsession with solving problems, no matter the cost. She had seen him navigate failure and success, and she knew that when Musk set his sights on something, there was no turning back. But not everyone in Musk's life shared his sense of urgency. Kimball Musk, Elon's younger brother, was one of the few people who could offer a different perspective. Kimball had always been more grounded, with a passion for food sustainability and the health of local communities. While Elon's focus was often on the big, global picture, Kimball had a different approach, one that was more focused on tangible, everyday solutions. Their differing visions had sometimes caused friction between them, but it was clear that they had a deep bond. Kimball had been by Elon's side through the darkest times in his career, offering support when others doubted him. In turn, Elon respected his brother's grounded approach and often sought his advice during moments of personal crisis. Today, though, things were different. Elon had to address the wildfires first. Whatever his brother wanted to talk about would have to wait. This was bigger than anything they had ever faced before. As Musk sat back in his chair, staring at the satellite images of the wildfires once more, his thoughts swirled. Could it be possible that these fires weren't the result of climate change alone? Were they being manipulated? And if so, who or what was behind it? His mind raced with possibilities, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't do this alone. He needed a team, people who shared his vision, people who weren't afraid to go after the hard truths, no matter how uncomfortable they might be. But more than that, he needed to act. The fires weren't waiting, and neither was the planet. "Gwynne," Musk said, his voice steady but urgent as he reached for his phone. "I need you on this. We've got a bigger problem than we realize." Elon Musk wasn't a man who waited for things to happen. He made them happen. And when he saw the anomalies in the wildfire data, his mind immediately jumped to one conclusion. This was no accident. Someone, or something, was behind it. The question now was who, or what, was pulling the strings. After his call with Gwynne Shotwell, he immediately began assembling a team of experts, people who could dig deeper into the data and uncover the truth. As much as he trusted his instincts, Musk knew that this was bigger than one person. It was going to take a collective effort to understand what was happening, and perhaps even stop it. The first person he called was Dr. Sarah Grant, a renowned climatologist who had been a key part of his solar energy initiatives at Tesla. She had an intimate understanding of how the environment worked and, just as importantly, how technology could impact it. Musk had worked with her on several projects before, and he trusted her judgment. She was pragmatic but open-minded, someone who wouldn't rule out even the most outlandish of theories until they were thoroughly investigated. "Sarah, it's Elon. I need you to look at some data I just received. There's something wrong with the wildfires happening around the world. They're following patterns they shouldn't be," Musk said, his tone urgent. "Can you take a look and see if you can find anything unusual?" Sarah's response was immediate. "I'm on it. I'll need some time to analyze the data, but I'll let you know if I find anything." Musk hung up, his thoughts still racing. The next person on his list was Andreas Zimmer, a cybersecurity expert who had worked with Musk on multiple occasions to ensure SpaceX's operations stayed safe from digital threats. While Zimmer wasn't an environmental scientist, his expertise in data encryption and satellite surveillance made him an invaluable asset in cases like this. "Elon? What's going on?" Andreas asked, picking up the phone on the first ring. "I need you to pull every piece of satellite data from SpaceX and Starlink you can get your hands on. We're dealing with something strange with these wildfires. The data's been tampered with, and I need your help to dig deeper," Musk explained. "I'll start pulling the files now," Andreas responded, his tone serious. "This sounds big. Let me know what you find, and we'll go from there." Musk hung up and leaned back in his chair, trying to calm his racing mind. The sense of urgency was overwhelming, but he knew better than to dive in without a clear plan. He had to gather information first, get the team up to speed, and then figure out the next step. He wasn't used to feeling this uncertain, but this was something new, something beyond his usual scope of work. While the team started gathering data, Musk took a moment to think about the bigger picture. He had always been a man of vision, but this situation was different. Wildfires were a devastating force of nature, but the idea that they could be manipulated, controlled, by an unknown entity was almost too much to fathom. Yet, the evidence was staring him in the face. The data didn't lie. There was something else going on here. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Gwyn Shotwell, her expression serious but determined. "Hey, Elon. I've been briefed. What's going on with the wildfires?" she asked, settling into the chair across from him. Musk quickly filled her in on the data anomalies, the strange patterns in the wildfires, and his growing suspicion that someone, or something, was influencing them. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew that Gwyn was the right person to help him think through this. "I'm not sure what we're dealing with yet, but the fires aren't behaving like they should," Musk said, pacing the room. "The question is, why? Who would want to cause this? Or is it something more?" Gwyn nodded thoughtfully. "If this is what you think it is, then we need to act fast. Wildfires are destructive on their own, but if someone's intentionally causing them, it could mean something even worse is on the horizon." Musk felt a flicker of something cold inside him, a realization that, if his suspicions were correct, the world might be facing a disaster that would be much bigger than the wildfires themselves. This wasn't just an environmental issue. This was a question of security, of control. And whoever had the ability to control the fires could very well have control over much more. "I've got a team pulling data right now," Musk continued, "and I need you to reach out to some of our government contacts. We may need to work with them, or at least get their eyes on this." Gwyn raised an eyebrow. "You want to bring the government into this already?" Musk met her gaze, his expression unwavering. "If this is a coordinated attack, if we're dealing with something on a global scale, we need all the help we can get. We can't take any chances." Gwyn paused, then nodded. "I'll make the calls, but we need to be careful. If this is a conspiracy, or if someone's behind these fires, the last thing we want is to make ourselves a target." Elon's mind buzzed with possibilities. "That's exactly why I need you in on this, Gwyn. You know how to navigate tricky situations. We're going to need that expertise now more than ever." Before Gwyn could respond, Musk's phone rang. It was Sarah Grant, the climatologist. "Elon, I've looked through the data. You're right. There's something strange going on with the wildfires. It's not just the patterns. The intensity of the fires seems to be accelerating, far beyond what we'd expect for this time of year." And there's something else. Some of the regions where these fires are occurring are more remote. We're seeing higher temperatures in areas that should be cooler. It's almost like the environment is being manipulated, but I can't figure out how, Sarah explained, her voice tight with concern. Musk's grip on the phone tightened. What are you suggesting? I don't know yet. But whatever is causing this, it's not just natural forces at play. Someone, or something, is influencing the climate. And we need to find out who, or what, is behind it, Sarah said. Musk felt a surge of adrenaline. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but the picture was still unclear. All he knew was that the wildfires were part of a much larger mystery, one that had the potential to change everything. We're on it, Sarah, Musk said, his voice steady. I'll keep you posted as we get more data. As he hung up, the weight of the situation settled back in. Whatever was happening, the world had no idea what was coming. But he did. And he wasn't about to sit back and wait for it to unfold. The days that followed were filled with an urgency that Musk wasn't used to. It wasn't often that he found himself working alongside a team of experts from different fields, each bringing their own skills to the table, piecing together a puzzle that, at its core, seemed utterly unexplainable. But this wasn't any ordinary challenge. The wildfires, the anomalies, the data, it was all pointing to something bigger, something that could threaten the world in ways Musk had never imagined. SpaceX's satellite data kept pouring in, and each new batch revealed more strange patterns. Andreas Zimmer, the cybersecurity expert, had begun sifting through layers of data to determine if anyone had tampered with the satellite systems, though everything appeared secure on the surface. The signals weren't being hacked. No one was interfering with the data streams, at least not directly. And yet, the anomalies remained. There was something else at play, something Musk couldn't explain. Meanwhile, Sarah Grant, the climatologist, was deep into her research. Her voice crackled over the phone one evening, the fatigue evident in her tone. Elon, I think I found something. It's subtle, but it's there. The fires are connected to temperature spikes, but not just in areas you'd expect. Some of the fires are cropping up in places that are typically damp or temperate. And the biggest clue is the soil composition. It's almost as if the natural conditions have been altered. Musk's mind spun. What kind of environmental manipulation are you talking about? Weather control? A weapon of some sort? Andreas hesitated. It's too early to tell. But there's a possibility that whoever's behind this has access to technology or resources we haven't even considered. Musk felt the gravity of the situation settle heavily on his shoulders. This wasn't just a question of natural disaster anymore. This was a targeted attack on the environment, one that could have global consequences. We need to track down the source of this, Musk said firmly. I want all the data, every satellite feed, every weather report, every scrap of information. We'll find the pattern. He turned to Gwen. Reach out to our contacts at the Department of Homeland Security. Let them know this isn't just about fires. This could be part of a larger scheme. If we're right, we may be dealing with something far more dangerous than anyone realizes. Gwen nodded. I'll make the call. But as Musk sat back down, a new thought began to gnaw at him. If these fires were being manipulated, the question was why? What was the end goal? And who stood to gain from wreaking havoc on the environment? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden notification on his phone. It was an encrypted message from an unknown source. Elon, the message began. If you want the truth, you need to look deeper. The wildfires are the least of your problems. Musk's heart skipped a beat. The cryptic message was chilling in its simplicity, and yet it confirmed everything he feared. Someone knew about the fires, and they wanted to make sure he understood the magnitude of the situation. The message ended with a warning. You're closer to the truth than you think. But be careful who you trust. Not everyone is who they seem. Musk's blood ran cold. This was no longer just a global environmental crisis. This was a game of secrets, manipulation, and shadowy forces. Forces that might be far more powerful than anything Musk had ever encountered. He turned to Gwen, his face pale. Someone's watching us. This just got a lot more complicated. Gwen stood up, her expression resolute. We've come this far, Elon. We're not backing down now. As the room filled with tension, Musk knew one thing for sure. The investigation into the wildfires was about to take a dark turn. And whatever the truth was, it would change the world forever. Elon Musk knew the stakes were rising with each passing day, but the encrypted message from the unknown source had shifted the ground beneath his feet. Whoever was behind this, whoever was manipulating the wildfires, was someone who knew just how to keep him on edge. It was no longer just about the fires themselves. The message had opened up a whole new layer to the mystery. Someone was actively trying to keep him in the dark, and Musk wasn't the type to back down from a challenge. The moment he received the message, his thoughts had been swirling. Who could possibly be trying to sabotage the investigation? Who had the power to control natural forces like wildfires? And why send him a warning instead of just continuing their operation in the shadows? Musk had spent the entire night poring over the data, speaking with Sarah Grant about the wildfires, trying to connect the dots, but the mystery had only deepened. What was initially a concern about strange patterns in climate data had quickly grown into something much darker. He was still in his office when Gwynne Shotwell arrived, her expression unusually tight. "Elon, I've been digging," she began, setting a folder of documents on the table. "I reached out to Homeland Security like you asked, and they had some disturbing things to say. They're aware of some kind of coordinated environmental manipulation, but they don't know who's behind it. They mentioned a new player, someone who's been operating under the radar for years." Musk's heart skipped a beat. A new player? Who? Someone who has the resources to manipulate large-scale environmental events. Someone with more money than most governments, Gwynne continued, her voice low. "But there's something strange. They're not a government entity. They've got their hands in everything: energy, climate research, even weather modification technology. Could it be the same people behind these fires?" Musk asked, his voice sharp. "I don't know yet," she said, shaking her head. "But there's a connection. I've had some off-the-record talks with a few of our contacts, and they're saying this group has been experimenting with environmental control for years, under the guise of climate engineering. There are whispers about them in the right circles, but no one can confirm anything publicly. It's all too classified." Musk felt a growing sense of unease. "So we're looking at a shadow organization with the ability to manipulate wildfires, maybe even the weather?" Gwynne nodded, her eyes narrowed. "That's what it looks like." This was exactly what Musk had feared. The fires were just a symptom of something much larger. If someone had the ability to control the environment, it could mean catastrophic consequences for the planet. And if they were playing this game, there was no telling what they might be planning next. "Elon, there's more," Gwynne said, handing him a printed report. "I found a link between some of the organizations tied to climate engineering and a series of corporate entities that deal with highly classified weather modification patents. They've been conducting experiments on a global scale." Musk scanned the documents quickly, his eyes catching key names that seemed to lead back to people with ties to some of the most powerful industries in the world: oil, energy, and tech. But what was most alarming was the mention of a facility in the Swiss Alps. It was small, isolated, and had recently come under scrutiny by environmental watchdogs for its potential to influence global weather patterns. "This looks like a well-funded operation," Musk muttered, his mind racing. "If they're behind the wildfires, they could be using the fires to test their technology or, worse, as a form of leverage." Gwynne agreed. "Exactly. And if they're using the wildfires as a cover, they might have other plans in the works too. This isn't just about fires. This could be part of a bigger scheme to control resources, manipulate ecosystems, or even drive climate policy." Musk felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. This was no longer about saving the planet from a disaster. It was about preventing an unseen, orchestrated collapse that could be playing out under everyone's noses. The implications were terrifying. "We need to get more information. And we need to get it fast," Musk said, standing up and pacing. "If they're manipulating the fires, there's a chance they've been doing this for a long time. And if they control the environment, they control everything. Food, water, energy, even governments. We need to find out how deep this goes." Gwynne's expression was grim. "Agreed. But we need to be careful. Whoever's behind this has the resources to cover their tracks. We might be walking into a trap." Musk paused, turning to face her. "Then we need to be prepared." "I'm not backing down, Gwynne. We're going to expose this." Just then, His phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Sarah Grant. "Elon, you're going to want to hear this," she said, her voice urgent. "I've done a deeper dive into the climate data, and it's worse than I thought. The fires, there's a pattern, yes, but what's more concerning is the fact that some of them are occurring in locations that are almost impossible for them to spread naturally. It's like they're being directed." "What do you mean?" Musk asked, feeling his pulse quicken. "Some of the fires are moving against the wind, or they're burning in places that are usually too wet to support such intense flames," Sarah explained. "I've found evidence of an external force being applied, something that's superheating the atmosphere in those regions. It's almost like someone's creating a perfect storm to ignite the fires." Musk's mind reeled. "That's exactly what I've been thinking. It's not just about climate change anymore. Someone is using weather manipulation technology to make these fires happen, and they're doing it in a way that makes them look like a natural disaster." "We're dealing with something big, Elon," Sarah continued. "I think we need to move on this before it escalates further. Whoever's behind this has the power to change the course of nature. We can't wait for someone else to stop them." "Agreed," Musk replied, his voice steely. "We're going to get ahead of this. Let's bring the team together. I want everything we have on this: satellite data, weather patterns, climate models. Let's find out who's behind it and stop them before it's too late." As he ended the call, he turned back to Gwen. "We have to move fast. We're up against a force that could reshape the planet, and we don't even know their end game yet." "We'll make sure we're ready," Gwen said, her voice filled with resolve. "But we need to stay one step ahead. Whoever's doing this, they won't stop until they've achieved their goal. We have to figure out what that is." The room was thick with tension. Musk knew that the path ahead would be treacherous. Whoever was behind the environmental manipulation wasn't just playing a game. They were playing for keeps, and Musk wasn't about to let them win. Elon Musk wasn't the type to be easily intimidated. After all, the tech mogul had built empires in industries that seemed impossible to conquer: space, electric vehicles, and clean energy. But as the investigation into the wildfires deepened, he felt a gnawing sense of unease that he couldn't shake. The encrypted message, the cryptic warning, and now the discovery that someone, or something, was deliberately manipulating the environment. It felt as though the very fabric of nature was being twisted by forces beyond anyone's control. As he sat in his office at SpaceX headquarters, the room illuminated only by the soft glow of his computer screen, Musk's mind was racing with the pieces of the puzzle. Everything seemed connected: the satellite data, the unusual fire patterns, the climate engineering projects tied to shadowy corporations, and now the link to an isolated facility in the Swiss Alps. "We need to get to the bottom of this," Musk muttered to himself, staring at the screen. He wasn't alone in this. His team, Sarah Grant, Gwen Shotwell, Andreas Zimmer, and others, had been working tirelessly, but the breakthrough still seemed just out of reach. The fires, once perceived as a series of unfortunate events, were quickly revealing themselves as part of something far more organized, far more dangerous. The fires were not random. They were meticulously planned and timed, appearing in the exact locations where they could do the most damage to both human life and the environment. As Musk was about to make another call, his phone buzzed. It was Sarah Grant. "Elon, I've found something," she said, her voice strained. "I think it's a breakthrough, but I'm going to need your approval to take the next step." Musk's pulse quickened. "What have you found, Sarah?" "There's a link between the locations of the wildfires and an obscure project that was funded several years ago. The project was called Phoenix Horizon, and it was an initiative to test large-scale weather manipulation using atmospheric energy fields. It was a secret military project, but it had all the hallmarks of something that could be used to influence climate patterns. I found classified documents that suggest Phoenix Horizon might still be active, and the company behind it has ties to the facility in the Swiss Alps." "Phoenix Horizon?" Musk's voice was low, his mind racing. "That sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel. So you're saying this technology could have caused the fires?" "I don't know yet, but I'm getting closer," Sarah replied. "I need access to their recent research. The problem is, this organization is so well hidden. Even the government doesn't have a clear picture of it. They've been operating in the shadows for years, pulling strings without anyone knowing. Musk leaned back in his chair, his mind processing the information. We need to get to that facility. Phoenix Horizon could be the key to everything. I agree, Sarah said, her tone resolute, but we'll need to be careful. This isn't just about investigating a facility. Whoever is behind this is playing a dangerous game. If they think we're onto them, they'll make sure we don't get any closer. Understood, Musk said, his voice hardening. We'll take every precaution. I'll have Gwyn make the arrangements. We need to move quickly before they realize we're coming. Hours later, Gwyn Shotwell and Andreas Zimmer had set up a secure meeting with their contacts in the intelligence community. The plan was simple: get access to the facility in the Swiss Alps, gather as much intel as they could, and leave without drawing attention to themselves. But Musk couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more dangerous than they anticipated. The next day, they were aboard a private jet, heading toward Europe. Musk stared out the window, his mind a whirlwind of questions. Who were these people behind Phoenix Horizon? What did they want with such power over the environment? And most importantly, why had they left such a trail of evidence for him to find? The flight felt long, the silence heavy with anticipation. When they landed in Geneva, Gwyn took the lead, arranging for their team to travel incognito. They would drive to the Swiss Alps in unmarked vehicles to avoid any unnecessary attention. As they made their way up the winding roads of the Alps, Musk couldn't help but feel that they were getting closer to the heart of something much larger than he had ever imagined. The facility itself was tucked away in a remote valley, hidden from prying eyes by steep mountains on all sides. They arrived late in the evening, and Musk's heart raced as they approached the entrance, a nondescript, heavily guarded building that looked more like a research facility than anything out of the ordinary. But Musk had learned over the years that nothing was ever truly ordinary when it came to powerful interests. The people who controlled this kind of technology weren't interested in making headlines. They preferred to stay hidden in plain sight. Gwyn and Andreas had done their homework, and with some creative maneuvering, they were able to gain access to the facility. But as they walked through the cold, sterile hallways, the eerie silence in the air only deepened Musk's sense of foreboding. "This place is too quiet," Andreas whispered. "It feels like we're being watched." "Stay sharp," Musk replied. "We're here to get information, not make a scene." The team moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. They passed several laboratories, each one filled with high-tech equipment, all humming with activity. Yet, there were no scientists in sight. No one working. The place felt abandoned, even though it was clearly operational. Then, they reached a large control room at the heart of the facility. The walls were lined with screens displaying weather data from around the world. Musk's eyes locked onto one of the monitors, a live feed of the wildfires they had been investigating. "These fires," Musk murmured. "They've been tracking them. But why?" Just as he was about to approach the control panel, a sudden noise echoed from down the hallway, footsteps growing louder. The team froze. "Hide," Gwyn whispered urgently. They ducked behind a row of equipment, holding their breath. Musk could hear the footsteps coming closer, the sound of voices talking in a language he didn't recognize. The tension in the air was palpable. Whoever was here, they weren't friendly. Suddenly, the door to the control room opened, and a figure stepped inside. Musk's heart skipped a beat. It was a man in a dark suit, his face obscured by a pair of sunglasses. He didn't belong here, and neither did the two armed guards following him. This was no ordinary security personnel. This was someone who had control over everything that was happening here. The air in the control room was thick with tension. Elon Musk could hear the soft hum of machinery in the background, the subtle sounds of computers processing data. But that noise, which once seemed almost soothing, now felt like an eerie countdown. A countdown to something catastrophic. The man in the dark suit stepped into the room, his presence imposing. His eyes, hidden behind dark sunglasses, scanned the room quickly, as if he were searching for something or someone. Musk held his breath, his body pressed against the cold metal of the equipment, trying to make himself as invisible as possible. He could feel the sweat on the back of his neck, the hairs on his arms standing on end. "Stay quiet," Gwyn whispered, her voice barely audible. Musk's pulse raced. They had come this far, But now they were dangerously close to being discovered. If they were caught, there would be no telling what might happen to them. The man in the suit turned slightly, his attention momentarily diverted by a monitor displaying satellite images of the ongoing wildfires. Musk caught a glimpse of the flames flickering on the screen, the deadly force that had been unleashed across the planet. "How much longer until the next phase begins?" the man asked in a low, controlled voice. One of the guards, standing by the door, answered. "The timeline is on track. Once the fires reach critical mass, we can begin the next stage of testing." Musk's heart skipped a beat. Testing. The words hung in the air like a dark promise. He had no idea what kind of test they were referring to, but he knew it couldn't be anything good. The fires were only the beginning. "Make sure the fire in the Amazon burns out before moving to the next site," the man ordered. "We don't want any more interference from the government." Musk's stomach churned. The Amazon. The fires were no longer just happening in isolated parts of the world. They were part of a global operation, one that spanned continents and ecosystems. Gwen leaned over, whispering urgently, "We need to get out of here. Now." But Musk was frozen. The man in the suit was still standing near the monitor, his fingers tapping lightly against the desk. There was something calculating about the way he moved, as though he knew exactly how to control every situation. It was like he wasn't just monitoring the fires, he was orchestrating them. The man turned his head toward the door, his expression unreadable behind the dark glasses. "We need to ensure that Phoenix Horizon remains undisturbed," he said. "Our work is too important. The next few weeks will determine the success of the entire operation." Musk's mind was racing. Phoenix Horizon. That was the name of the project, the key to everything they had uncovered so far. But what was the operation they were talking about? What was the endgame? The man in the suit gave an almost imperceptible nod to one of the guards. The guard turned, stepping toward the control panel, and began typing furiously, inputting commands into the system. Musk could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was it. They were so close to unraveling the mystery, yet they were at the brink of being discovered. Without warning, the lights in the control room flickered, and the sound of the door slamming open echoed down the hallway. Musk's heart stopped. "Are you finished?" a new voice demanded. It was sharp, authoritative, a woman's voice. The man in the suit turned quickly, his posture stiffening. "Yes," he said calmly, though there was an edge to his voice. "We're almost ready to move forward with the next phase." Musk's mind spun. Whoever this woman was, she held power over the operation. It wasn't just the man in the suit. There was a network of people, all pulling the strings behind the scenes. Musk had to find out who they were and what their ultimate goal was before it was too late. The woman entered the room, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She was tall, with sharp features and a cold, calculating gaze that seemed to see straight through the walls. Unlike the man in the suit, she wasn't wearing sunglasses. Her eyes were piercing, clear, and filled with an unnerving certainty. "Is everything proceeding according to plan?" she asked, her gaze sweeping over the monitors. "Yes, Director," the man replied. "The fires are on track. The next wave will begin shortly." The woman nodded, but there was something in her eyes that sent a chill down Musk's spine. She wasn't just overseeing the fires. She was orchestrating something much bigger, something with far-reaching consequences. "If we continue this way," the woman said, her voice cold and detached, "we will have the leverage we need. The governments won't stand in our way once the next phase is complete. We'll control the flow of resources, food, water, energy. We'll decide who survives and who doesn't." Musk felt the blood drain from his face. Control the flow of resources? Was this what it was all about? The fires, the climate manipulation, it wasn't just about power over the environment. It was about total control over the planet's most essential resources. "Director," the man in the suit said, his voice lower than before, "are you sure we should go forward with this? There's a risk that—" The woman cut him off, her tone sharp. "There is no turning back now. We've come too far. The world won't even realize what's happening until it's too late. Let them think it's just an accident, just climate change, or a series of natural disasters. By the time they figure it out, we'll already have what we need." Musk's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a plan to test some technology, It was a complete overhaul of the world order. They were playing with fire, literally and figuratively. Whoever was behind Phoenix Horizon wasn't interested in saving the planet. They were interested in controlling it. He looked over at Gwen and Andreas, his thoughts racing. They had to stop this. Whatever these people were planning, they couldn't let it go any further. But getting caught now would be fatal. They had to leave, and they had to leave now. The woman turned to the man in the suit. Make sure the project is executed flawlessly. We don't have room for failure. Understood, the man said, his voice tight. Musk's heart pounded in his chest. He had to act quickly. They had learned enough to know that they were up against a force far more powerful than anything they had ever faced. The question now was how to stop it, without getting caught. The team slowly backed away, moving as quietly as possible toward the exit. They hadn't gathered all the information they needed, but it was clear that the operation was far more extensive and dangerous than they had imagined. They had to get back to the U.S. and make their findings public before the next phase of this operation began. But even as Musk led his team out of the facility, he couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just being watched now. They were being hunted. The car sped down the winding mountain road, the tires screeching against the icy pavement as the team made their escape. Elon Musk sat in the back, his fingers clenched tightly around the armrest, his mind still racing through the horrific revelations they had just uncovered. Phoenix Horizon, the global operation, the manipulation of the planet's resources. It was more than just an experiment. It was a calculated move to seize control of the world's very survival. The woman, the director, had spoken with a chilling certainty. She wasn't just a mastermind behind the operation. She was the architect of a new world order. Her words haunted Musk. By the time they figure it out, we'll already have what we need. That was the real plan. They were testing the waters with the wildfires, but they had much bigger goals in mind. Controlling resources, dictating who lived and who didn't, reshaping the future on their terms. We need to get back to the States and go public with this, Gwen Shotwell said, her voice tense. She was at the wheel, her eyes focused on the road. The sooner the world knows, the better. Agreed, Musk replied. But we need to make sure we have irrefutable proof. We don't have enough right now to take down something this big. We'll get it, Gwen said firmly. We'll make sure they can't cover it up. Musk nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. What if they were already too late? What if the operation had progressed too far for anyone to stop it? The drive back to the airport felt like an eternity. As they approached the small airstrip where their private jet awaited, Musk's thoughts were still a jumble of fear and determination. They needed to regroup, analyze the data they had collected, and figure out how to strike back. But every instinct in him screamed that they weren't safe yet, not by a long shot. Once aboard the plane, the team immediately began discussing their next steps. Musk was already speaking to their cybersecurity team, making arrangements for the data they'd stolen from the facility to be encrypted and stored in multiple locations. Do you think they'll come after us? Andreas Zimmer asked, his voice low. He had been quiet during the ride, but now the question had to be asked. Musk had been considering it for hours. I don't think they'll hesitate, Musk said, his voice cold. Whoever is behind this will do whatever it takes to keep their operation hidden. As the plane ascended, leaving the icy expanse of the Alps behind, Musk's thoughts turned to the people behind Phoenix Horizon. This wasn't some rogue group. It was an organized operation with vast resources, political influence, and the power to move the world's levers without anyone noticing. What if we're wrong? Sarah Grant asked, breaking Musk's train of thought. What if they're not trying to control the world's resources? What if they're just testing this technology? What if they don't even know the consequences? Musk looked up at her, his expression hardening. The woman, the director, she wasn't just talking about testing technology. She was talking about taking control, not just of the environment, but of everything. The governments, the corporations, the population, everything. I've seen that kind of talk before. It's dangerous, Sarah. But we don't have all the pieces yet, she argued. We need to be sure. What if we're jumping to conclusions? Gwen shot Sarah a look. Musk is right. We've seen enough to know that this goes deeper than just some rogue scientist's pet project. This is coordinated. They want something more than just data. Musk leaned back in his seat, staring out the window at the sprawling landscape below, the mountains gradually giving way to the flat expanse of Europe. His mind kept replaying the woman's words, the coldness in her voice as she outlined the next steps of their operation. By the time they figure it out, we'll already have what we need. He shook his head. There was no time to waste. If he was right, the operation was already in motion, and the next phase was imminent. They had to act fast. We need to get to the bottom of this, he said finally. We need to track down the other sites. We've learned too much to stop now. Agreed, Gwen said, her voice steely. But we'll need more resources. We'll need to bring in people we can trust, people who can get us what we need before they close the doors for good. Musk nodded, his mind turning. They had access to a network of people, but they had to be careful. This was bigger than they realized. The people behind Phoenix Horizon weren't just interested in controlling resources. They were trying to reshape the global order. And Musk had no intention of letting them succeed. Hours later, as the team arrived in the United States, the first signs of the global conspiracy began to take shape. The news was already buzzing about the wildfires, but the official narrative was still being spun. The fires were attributed to climate change, natural disasters, and the usual buzzwords. No one had even begun to question the patterns Musk and his team had identified. But Musk knew the truth, and that truth was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The team huddled in their conference room at SpaceX, poring over the data from the Swiss facility. As they analyzed the files, one thing became clear. The global reach of Phoenix Horizon was vast. The operation had already been set in motion across multiple continents. The fires were just the beginning. Musk's phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from an anonymous source. He opened it, his eyes narrowing as he read the short, cryptic note. You're not alone. Someone is watching. They know you're coming. Musk felt a chill run down his spine. They were being hunted, and whoever was watching them was not going to stop until they silenced the truth. We need to move fast, Musk said, slamming his fist on the table. They know we're onto them. They won't let us walk away from this. But even as he said it, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The pressure was mounting. Every minute felt like a countdown, the seconds ticking by in an unbearable rhythm. Elon Musk sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his closest team members at SpaceX headquarters, reviewing the encrypted files they had retrieved from the Swiss facility. Their mission to expose the Phoenix Horizon operation had just begun, but already it felt as though the world was closing in on them. We need to find a way to make this public, but the world isn't ready for it, Musk said, rubbing his temples. If we reveal the full scope of Phoenix Horizon now, they'll bury it. No one will believe us. It's too big. It's too much. Gwen Shotwell, ever the realist, leaned forward, her voice steady. We have the data, but we don't have the full picture. We're going to need more than just documents and satellite images. We need hard evidence, something that will force the world to pay attention. Musk nodded. He knew they needed more. But what could they possibly uncover that would be enough to expose an operation so vast, so secretive, and so powerful? The people behind Phoenix Horizon were meticulous. They had built layers of protection into every facet of their project. We need to find the missing pieces, Musk said, his voice hard. We need to figure out exactly what they've been doing, where, and how they're controlling these fires. Andreas Zimmer, the team's cybersecurity expert, spoke up. I've been digging into the company that operates the facility in the Swiss Alps. It's a shell corporation, but it has ties to some of the largest energy firms in the world. Ones we know have been heavily involved in climate manipulation for decades. Sarah Grant, who had been quiet for a moment, finally spoke, her voice filled with concern. I've been looking into their satellite data as well. It's not just weather manipulation. These fires are being strategically used to redirect the flow of resources, particularly water and agricultural land. They're testing new technologies to control ecosystems on a massive scale. Musk stared at the screens before him, the maps and data flickering in the dim light. So this isn't just about creating disaster. They're testing ways to control food, water, and land. Gwen nodded. Exactly. Whoever's behind this is planning to leverage the disasters they're creating for geopolitical and economic power. If they control the world's food and water supply, they control everything. The governments won't stand a chance. Musk's thoughts turned dark. He had been up all night analyzing the data, and he knew they were close to a revelation that could change everything. But they had to act quickly. Time was running out. The team's research had uncovered several key locations where Phoenix Horizon had been conducting their tests, remote areas in the Amazon, the Australian outback, and now, the fires raging across the western United States. But there was a pattern emerging. Each of these sites was situated near strategic resources, water reserves, vast agricultural land, and important mining operations. If they're trying to control the planet's resources, Musk said, his voice low, then they're already much further along than we thought. And if they're doing it this fast, it means they have something powerful at their disposal. Gwyn glanced at the others. We need to hit these sites. We need boots on the ground to confirm what's really happening before we go public. Otherwise, we're just handing them ammunition to discredit us. Musk agreed. But there was a problem. The sites were heavily guarded. Whoever was behind Phoenix Horizon had no intention of letting anyone get close without paying the price. We need to be careful, Musk said, his tone now stern. If they think we're getting too close to the truth, they'll come for us. We can't underestimate how far they're willing to go. At that moment, the door to the conference room opened, and a familiar voice interrupted their conversation. Elon, we've got a problem, said an urgent voice. It was their head of security, David. His face was grim, his expression clouded with concern. What is it? Musk asked, standing up. We've been compromised, David said flatly. Someone's been tracking us. Our communications are being intercepted, and there are people outside watching the building. We don't have much time. Musk's heart sank. They'd known it was coming, but now the threat was real. They had been careful, but someone had managed to infiltrate their network. The people behind Phoenix Horizon were closing in. How do we fix this? Musk asked, his voice steady but his mind racing. How do we protect ourselves? David pulled up a map on his tablet. I've already taken steps to protect our location, but it's only a matter of time before they find us. I recommend getting out of here. It's too risky to stay. Musk stared at the map, his mind calculating their next move. He couldn't afford to let this slow them down, not now. But staying put was just as dangerous. We're going, Musk said decisively, but we're not giving up on this investigation. We're getting the evidence we need. David nodded. I'll arrange for a secure extraction. We'll get you to safety. As the team packed up and prepared to leave, Musk couldn't shake the feeling of being cornered. The walls were closing in. The people behind Phoenix Horizon were no longer just shadowy figures in the background. They were hunting them, and they were getting closer every minute. They made their way to a safe house in a secluded area, far from the prying eyes of the public. The place was heavily fortified, with layers of security protocols in place to protect them from any potential threats. But even as Musk and his team settled into their temporary refuge, he knew that this was only the calm before the storm. They had been compromised, and now they were marked targets. We need to accelerate our timeline, Musk said, pacing the room. If we wait any longer, they'll bury us. We have to expose them before they can move forward with their plan. Gwyn shot him a look. We're running out of time. We need the rest of the evidence, Elon. And we need it now. Musk nodded. He had no intention of backing down. But he also knew that this was more than just an investigation. This was a war. One that could decide the future of the planet. And if he and his team didn't act fast, they might not be able to stop the forces that were rising against them. The safe house was silent, except for the low hum of the satellite internet connection that kept the team linked to the outside world. Elon Musk stood by the window, his eyes scanning the horizon. The night had fallen, and the darkness outside felt oppressive, like a storm waiting to break. They were safe for now, but Musk knew that this calm was fleeting. Every second they spent in hiding brought them closer to being found. They needed to act fast, before Phoenix Horizon's operatives found them first. Gwyn Shotwell was the first to speak, her voice calm but filled with urgency. We have two choices. We can either stay here and wait for the evidence to come to us, or we can go out there and get it ourselves. We're not going to get a second chance. Musk nodded, his mind already racing through the possibilities. We have to infiltrate one of their sites, he said firmly. If we're going to take them down, we need to get first-hand evidence of what they're really doing. We can't just rely on the data we've already gathered. We need to see it with our own eyes. Andreas Zimmer, who had been working tirelessly on decrypting more files, looked up from his laptop. There's one site that stands out. It's located in Northern California, near a critical water reserve. From what I can gather, it's a testing ground for their resource manipulation technology. We can't afford to wait for the perfect intel. We need to move quickly. Sarah Grant added, we know they're using wildfires as part of their operations. But what we haven't figured out yet is how far this manipulation goes. If they're controlling water, energy, and food sources, there's no telling what else they're experimenting with. We need to get into their inner sanctum. The weight of what they were about to do settled heavily on Musk's shoulders. This wasn't just a daring mission to stop a global conspiracy. It was a race against time to uncover a system of control that could change the fate of the world. All right, Musk said, taking a deep breath. Let's get the team ready. We're going in. Hours later, they were in the air, traveling under the cover of darkness. The jet's engines roared as they cut through the night sky, leaving behind the safe house that had offered them temporary respite. The team was tight-lipped, each of them focused on the task ahead. Their mission was risky, and the danger was very real, but they had no choice. The site they were heading toward was isolated, deep in the forests of Northern California. The area was known for its rugged terrain, difficult to access without the right equipment, and, Musk suspected, it was the perfect location to keep their operations hidden from prying eyes. If Phoenix Horizon had their hands in this area, they were using the natural landscape as both shield and weapon. As they approached the site, Musk's thoughts drifted back to the encrypted message they'd received. You're not alone. Someone is watching. They know you're coming. The message had sent a ripple of unease through him, and now, as they prepared to land, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. We're almost there, Gwen said, her voice calm but firm as she piloted the jet through the night sky. Stay sharp. Once we land, we need to move quickly. David, their head of security, was already prepping their gear. We've got eyes on the ground. There's a clearing nearby where we can drop you off. We'll hold the perimeter, but you're on your own once you're in the forest. Musk looked around at his team, all of them ready, their faces set in determination. He knew that this wasn't just about exposing Phoenix Horizon anymore. It was about survival. All right, he said. We move in, we get the intel, and we get out. No mistakes. The jet descended through the thick fog, the headlights of the runway barely visible below. As they touched down on the makeshift runway, the quiet hum of the engines died down, and the team immediately began their disembarkation. The air was cold and thick with moisture, the smell of pine and damp earth surrounding them. The forest was dense here, the trees towering overhead like silent sentinels. Musk's heart pounded in his chest. Every step felt like a risk. Stay close, David whispered, his hand firmly gripping the weapon strapped to his side. We're on high alert. If they've been tracking us, they'll know we're here by now. The team nodded, moving swiftly but cautiously through the forest, staying low to the ground and avoiding the main paths. It was clear they weren't the only ones out here. The trees had been disturbed recently, broken branches, trampled undergrowth, and signs of recent movement. As they neared the edge of the facility, the outline of a large building came into view, nestled among the trees like a predator waiting to strike. The facility itself was fortified, with high fences and watchtowers. Musk could see armed guards moving around the perimeter, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. We've got to get inside, Musk said, his voice barely a whisper. We'll need to access the control room and get data from their servers. Gwen pointed toward a small side entrance, partially obscured by overgrown vines and shrubbery. That's our best bet. We can slip in through there. They moved silently, ducking behind trees and avoiding the guards' patrol routes. Every step felt like it could be their last. But they kept moving forward, driven by the urgency of their mission. When they reached the entrance, Musk gestured for the team to stop. David quickly set up a breach charge on the door, and with a muffled pop, the door swung open. They were inside. The facility was eerily quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed above them as they moved down a narrow corridor. The walls were lined with surveillance equipment, and Musk could hear the faint whirring of machines in the distance. We're in, Musk said, signaling the others to follow. Now, we need to find the main server room. As they moved deeper into the facility, they passed several rooms filled with high-tech equipment. Some of it was familiar, used for monitoring environmental data and satellite imagery. But other machines were far more sophisticated, machines Musk didn't recognize. "We need to move faster," Gwen said, her voice low but insistent. "They'll be on to us any second now." Musk nodded, pushing forward. They reached the main server room, a high-security area with reinforced doors and multiple security checkpoints. But Musk had anticipated this. He had a plan to bypass the system. David quickly disabled the security protocols, and with a loud click, the door opened. The team rushed inside, and Musk moved immediately to the central console. He began typing rapidly, accessing the facility's internal network. Files and data started to flood the screen, and Musk's heart raced as he realized just how far-reaching Phoenix Horizon's operations were. This wasn't just one isolated facility. It was part of a global network, with multiple sites operating in sync. Then, he found it, a map of the wildfires, plotted in real time. And there, at the center of it all, was a data cluster labeled Project Omega. "Gwen, get over here," Musk said urgently. "This is it. This is their main operation." Just as he began to pull the data, the lights in the room flickered, and the unmistakable sound of boots echoed down the hall. "They found us," David said grimly. Musk's heart dropped. There was no time left. "Grab everything you can," Musk ordered. "We need to get out now." The server room door slammed shut behind them with a deafening bang, and the team rushed down the hallway, their footsteps echoing like a drumbeat in the tense silence that followed. Musk's pulse pounded in his ears, his breath quick and shallow as he clutched the hard drive containing the data they had just stolen. The files were invaluable, more than just proof. They were the key to unraveling everything. But now, they were racing against a clock that seemed to be ticking faster with every passing second. "They're coming," David hissed, glancing over his shoulder as he led the group through the maze-like corridors. "We don't have much time." Musk's mind was spinning. He had seen the data, the wildfire maps, the environmental manipulation techniques, and the unsettlingly precise control they exerted over critical resources. Project Omega wasn't just a name. It was the next phase of the operation, the final piece of the puzzle, and they had it. But now, they had to get out alive. Gwen Shotwell was right behind Musk, her eyes sharp and calculating. "We need to move fast, and we need an exit strategy. They won't let us walk out of here with that data. They'll do everything in their power to stop us." Musk nodded grimly. The weight of the hard drive in his hand felt like a ticking time bomb. If Phoenix Horizon got their hands on it, they'd never be able to expose them. And that meant no one would ever know the truth about the global conspiracy they were all caught up in. They reached a security door at the end of the corridor. David was already at the keypad, inputting the override code. 5 seconds, he muttered. "Too long." Musk snapped. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, more distinct. They were closing in. Without a second to spare, David pulled out a small explosive charge from his pack, slapping it onto the door. Boom. The blast sent a shockwave through the hallway, and the door fell inward with a resounding crash. The team charged through the debris, not waiting for the smoke to clear. Musk's mind was singularly focused. They had to get to the extraction point. They couldn't afford to stop, not for a second. The forest outside was still their best bet. If they could get to the clearing in time, they could be extracted. But there was a new sense of urgency now. As they moved through the building, they began hearing more than just the sounds of security personnel closing in. There were the unmistakable thrum of helicopters in the distance, their rotors slicing through the night sky like ominous harbingers of doom. "They know we're here," Gwen said, her voice taut with tension. "We're running out of time. We've got to get out of here now." The team split into two groups, moving swiftly down different hallways to avoid being cornered. The building had become a labyrinth of flashing lights and red alarms, each one signaling their imminent discovery. But Musk refused to panic. They'd been through worse before, but this time, the stakes were higher than ever. As they neared the exit, the sound of helicopters grew louder. Then, it hit Musk. They had been expecting them. He had thought they were being cautious, But now he realized that Phoenix Horizon had anticipated this very move. They'd set a trap, and Musk and his team had walked straight into it. "I've got a bad feeling about this," David said, his voice low. He stopped at a junction, listening intently. "They've blocked the extraction route. We can't go that way." Musk's mind raced. They were being herded. The walls of the facility were closing in on them. Every route they tried seemed to be a dead end. But he wasn't about to give up, not when they were this close. "All right," Musk said, taking control. "We change plans. We're heading to the backup extraction point. I've got the coordinates. It's 2 miles west of here." Gwyn and the others exchanged glances. "Do you think we can make it?" Musk's voice was firm, though his heart was hammering in his chest. "We don't have a choice." They sprinted toward the exit. The doors to the facility were ahead, but the ground was swarming with security forces. There was no way they could make it out unnoticed. "We'll take the tunnels," David said, pointing toward a maintenance hatch beneath their feet. "It'll take us to the service entrance on the other side of the compound. From there, we can get to the clearing. No one will be able to follow us." Musk hesitated, but only for a moment. "Let's go." The team ducked into the tunnels, the damp air thick with the scent of dirt and steel. They moved quickly, navigating the darkened maze beneath the facility. Every step they took felt like an eternity. The pounding in Musk's chest was deafening, but he couldn't afford to slow down. Not now. Minutes felt like hours, and just as they reached the service entrance, the sound of helicopters grew deafening. They had no more time to waste. "We're almost there," David said, peeking out from behind a wall. He scanned the perimeter before signaling the group to follow. "Move, move, move." They burst through the service door and into the night, the cold air hitting them like a wall. The clearing was in sight, just beyond the tree line. But as they ran, Musk's heart sank. There, hovering in the distance, were the spotlights of a helicopter, cutting through the fog like an unforgiving eye. They were closing in. "We're not going to make it," Sarah said, her voice laced with panic. She could see the helicopter's searchlight sweeping the area, its spotlight drawing closer. David raised his weapon. "Get down," he shouted. They ducked behind a cluster of trees, hiding in the shadows. The helicopter's spotlight passed over them, and for a moment, the world stood still. Musk held his breath, his eyes darting around for an escape. He could hear the helicopter circling, its engines roaring overhead. "Is it the extraction team?" Gwyn whispered urgently. Musk strained his ears, listening. The helicopter's lights shifted as it turned to circle back. "No, we're not alone," he muttered, a chill crawling up his spine. "We're being followed. They've already called reinforcements." A chilling realization struck Musk with full force. They weren't just dealing with a corrupt organization anymore. Phoenix Horizon had vast resources at their disposal, and now, Musk and his team were on their radar for good. The game had changed. But one thing was certain. They couldn't back down now. They had the data, and they weren't going to let it slip through their fingers. "Get ready," Musk said, his voice steady with resolve. "We fight." The night air was thick with tension. Musk's heart raced, his breath coming in short bursts as the helicopter's spotlight continued to sweep over their hiding spot. Every moment felt like an eternity. The sound of rotors overhead grew louder, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble in sync with the whirring blades. They were so close to their extraction point, yet so far from safety. "This is it," David said in a low voice. His eyes narrowed in focus as he scanned the forest around them. He gripped his weapon tightly, every sense alert to the slightest movement. "We can't stay here. They'll find us eventually." Musk knew David was right. The helicopter was closing in, its spotlight nearly blinding them as it passed over once more. They had no time to waste. If they didn't move soon, the team would be trapped, and all of their hard work, the data they'd stolen, the truth they were so close to exposing, would be lost forever. Gwyn Shotwell glanced at Musk, her face set in determination. "We can't let them corner us. We need to break through. You've got the data. That's all that matters now." The gravity of her words hit him like a ton of bricks. They had been fighting for this moment, and now that they had the evidence, there was no turning back. But escaping the facility wasn't going to be easy. Phoenix Horizon's reach was vast, and their resources were seemingly endless. They had to stay one step ahead. "Let's move," Musk said, his voice steady, despite the growing panic clawing at him. He motioned for the team to follow, leading them through the underbrush as quickly and quietly as they could. They moved swiftly through the woods, staying low and using the trees as cover, but the sound of the helicopter above them never stopped. It hovered just out of sight, its searchlight cutting through the night like a searching hand, probing for any sign of movement. They were close now, so close they could almost taste the freedom they'd been fighting for. The extraction point was just beyond the tree line, a small clearing where a hidden vehicle waited for them. But as they reached the edge of the forest, the worst possible thing happened. The spotlight landed directly on them. "Go, go, go," David barked. He shoved Musk forward, urging him toward the clearing. But it was too late. The helicopter's spotlight was fixed on them now, and the roar of the engines intensified. They had no choice but to make a run for it. There was no more hiding. The team sprinted, the heavy crunch of boots on the forest floor mingling with the deafening sound of the helicopter's rotors. The extraction point was within reach, but the closer they got, the more they felt like they were running into a trap. Musk's mind raced, formulating a plan on the fly. "We need to split up," Musk said between gasps of breath. "It's our only shot. David, take the left flank. Gwyn, you're with me on the right." They didn't question him. There was no time for hesitation. In perfect synchronization, they split off, weaving between the trees in different directions. Musk's heart pounded in his chest as he ran, every step taking him closer to freedom and closer to the danger that pursued them. The helicopter's spotlight flickered between the two groups, but Musk's move was calculated. As he ducked behind a large oak, the light shifted just in time to avoid detection. His pulse raced as he looked back toward Gwyn, who was already setting up a defensive position with David. They had seconds, maybe minutes before the guards on the ground caught up with them. The trees ahead were sparse, no cover, no escape. Then, in the distance, he saw it. A flash of headlights. The vehicle. The extraction team was coming for them. "They're here," Musk shouted, his voice full of relief. The sight of the vehicle brought hope, but it also brought the full force of the Phoenix Horizon operation down upon them. He saw armed guards pouring into the clearing, emerging from the shadows like specters, guns raised and ready. It was a standoff now. The guards moved closer, closing the gap between them and the team. Musk's mind raced. There was no way to fight their way out of this. They had to rely on the element of surprise, on the extraction team's ability to make a timely intervention. Then, without warning, gunfire erupted. The team ducked instinctively, and Musk felt the air around him thrum with the force of the bullets as they ricocheted off nearby rocks and trees. "Get down," Gwyn yelled, pulling him into the dirt. The others were already in position, taking cover and returning fire. The forest erupted into chaos, the sharp crack of gunfire filling the air as Phoenix Horizon's forces closed in. But then, another sound cut through the noise. The roar of an engine, followed by the screech of tires on dirt. The extraction vehicle was charging into the clearing, a high-powered truck with armored sides and mounted weapons. The guards hesitated for a moment, just long enough for the extraction team to make their move. David opened fire, his shots precise, taking out the first two guards in his line of sight. Musk could feel the adrenaline surging through him now. He had one goal, to make it to the vehicle to get to safety. "Move," David shouted. "We're almost there." Musk didn't need any more encouragement. He sprinted toward the truck, dodging another spray of bullets. He could hear the crack of gunfire, feel the heat of the explosions in the distance. But it didn't matter. He had the data. He had the proof that could take down Phoenix Horizon once and for all. As he reached the truck, David swung the door open. "Get in now." Without looking back, Musk jumped into the vehicle. The doors slammed shut behind him, and the engine roared to life. The vehicle surged forward, pushing through the trees, smashing through the underbrush as the extraction team gunned the engine. The helicopter, now a speck in the sky behind them, continued its pursuit, but the vehicle was too fast, too well-armed to be caught. Musk felt the weight of the hard drive in his hand as they barreled down the path, the trees blurring by in a rush of green and black. "We're not out of the woods yet," David muttered, his eyes scanning the rearview mirror. But we're one step closer. Musk could feel the tension in his body begin to ease, just a little. They had made it, this far at least. But he knew the fight wasn't over. Phoenix Horizon wasn't going to give up easily, and they were only just beginning to unravel the dark secrets that had been buried for so long. As the truck sped away, Musk looked at the team, his heart still racing but his resolve stronger than ever. This is just the beginning. The truck rumbled over the uneven road, the engine's growl almost soothing in the tense silence that enveloped the team. They had just escaped Phoenix Horizon's compound, but the victory felt hollow, the weight of what lay ahead pressing down on Musk's chest. He stared out the window, watching the blur of trees and underbrush whip past them as the safe house loomed ahead. They had barely spoken since their escape, each person lost in their thoughts, adrenaline still pumping through their veins. They had the data. They had the proof. But they also had a target painted squarely on their backs. Musk took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. His fingers still clutched the hard drive in his jacket pocket, a constant reminder of how much was at stake. If Phoenix Horizon got their hands on it again, it would be over. They couldn't let that happen. David was in the front seat, his face set in grim determination as he navigated the back roads. The other members of the team were scattered across the vehicle, but their eyes all held the same haunted look, the same understanding that their lives had irrevocably changed. "You think we lost them?" Gwen asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was sharp, tinged with exhaustion, but there was a steely edge to it that Musk had come to respect over the past few days. David glanced over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the rearview mirror. "For now, but I'm not taking any chances. We keep moving." Musk felt his chest tighten. He knew David was right. They weren't safe yet. Phoenix Horizon wouldn't stop until they had wiped out every trace of the team and reclaimed the data. "Where exactly are we going?" Sarah asked from the back seat. She had been unusually quiet since their escape, and Musk could tell she was still processing the chaos they had just endured. "Is there really a safe house out here?" David nodded, though his grip on the wheel tightened. "It's remote. A friend of mine set it up a few years back. It's secure. For now, that's the best we've got." Musk could hear the uncertainty in his voice, even though David was trying to mask it. They were all in uncharted territory. The calm they were experiencing was only temporary, a brief pause before the next storm. Gwen looked out the window, her face unreadable. "We'll need to do more than hide. We need to go public with the data. If we want to stop Phoenix Horizon, we need allies. People who can help us fight back." Musk turned toward her, meeting her gaze. "I know, but we don't even know what we're up against yet. We don't know how deep this runs. The moment we go public, Phoenix Horizon will come after everyone we contact. We need to be careful." The truck slowed as they approached a small cabin tucked away in the woods. It looked like any other remote shelter, worn from years of exposure but well-maintained. There were no lights visible, no sign of life beyond the occasional creak of a distant branch. It felt isolated, as though the world outside didn't exist. David pulled up to the cabin and killed the engine. The team sat in silence for a moment, taking in the stillness of the night. No helicopter in the sky, no voices on the wind, just the sound of the forest around them. "This is it," David said, pushing open the door and stepping out into the dark. "Let's get inside and lay low for now." Musk nodded, his mind already racing ahead to their next move. As the team filed out of the truck and toward the cabin, he felt a strange sense of relief. They were here. They were safe, for the moment. The interior of the cabin was simple, sparsely furnished with just enough to get by. It was clear that this place hadn't seen much use recently. A single table sat in the center, surrounded by mismatched chairs. A wood-burning stove in the corner provided the only heat, casting a faint glow across the room. Musk set his bag down on the table and pulled out the hard drive. He stared at it for a long moment, as though waiting for it to speak to him, to offer some insight into the chaos that had consumed their lives. "This is bigger than I thought," he said quietly, breaking the silence. Gwen, who had been pacing near the door, stopped and turned to him. "What do you mean?" Musk's fingers hovered over the hard drive, his mind racing with the possibilities of what they had uncovered. "I mean, I don't think Phoenix Horizon is just a private organization. It's more than that. It's like they're working with someone, or something bigger. The data, the wildfires, it's all connected. I don't know how yet, but we need to figure it out. Fast. David leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. So what's our next move? We don't have much time before they figure out we're gone. Musk felt the weight of the question settle on him. He had been a part of some high-stakes ventures before, but this felt different. This wasn't just a business deal gone wrong or a hostile takeover. This was something much darker. We need to dig deeper, Musk said, his voice steady. We need to find out who's behind Phoenix Horizon, and we need to get that information to the public. But we can't do it alone. We'll need to reach out to someone who can help us expose them. Gwyn nodded. I've got contacts, people who owe me favors, but we'll need to move fast. If we wait too long, we'll become the hunted. Agreed, Musk replied. He stood up, pacing around the cabin, his thoughts racing. We can't stay here long. We'll need a plan, a real one, and we need to figure out how to handle the fallout from all of this. There's no going back. The room fell silent again, each person lost in their thoughts. Musk's mind raced as he looked at the team. They had come this far, but the hardest part was just beginning. We'll need to be smart, Musk said finally, his voice firm. We have the data, but we need to use it carefully. Phoenix Horizon won't stop until we're dead, and they won't care who we bring down in the process. Gwyn met his gaze, her eyes filled with resolve. We'll make them care. Musk nodded, his sense of purpose hardening. The journey ahead would be perilous, but they had come this far. They weren't turning back now. The cabin's warmth offered a temporary reprieve, but the weight of the situation pressed heavily on Musk's chest. It was like a constant hum in the back of his mind. The data, the secrets they had uncovered, and the people hunting them. There was no way to outrun this storm. It was coming for them, whether they were ready or not. Musk sat at the table, the hard drive in front of him, the light from the stove flickering across its surface. The data it contained was explosive, no question about that. But the question was, who would they trust with it? Let's get this straight, David said, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. We've got the data. We know Phoenix Horizon is behind the wildfires, but we don't have the full picture yet. This isn't just about saving the planet. They're playing a much bigger game. We need to figure out what that game is fast. Musk looked at David, nodding in agreement. Exactly. The wildfires were just a part of their plan. The data we have is only the tip of the iceberg. I'm willing to bet they're using these events to gain control of major natural resources, water, food supply, maybe even global energy markets. They want power, and they're willing to destroy everything in their path to get it. Gwyn shot Musk a sharp glance, her brow furrowed. And you think we can just walk into the public eye with this? We expose them, and what? We're dead men? I don't see another choice, Musk said. The longer we sit on this, the more people will get hurt. Phoenix Horizon is too big. They're too powerful. We need to go public, but we need to do it carefully. The tension in the room thickened. Everyone knew the risks. They weren't just up against a corporation. They were up against a shadow organization that seemed to have its hands in everything. They couldn't just throw the data out into the world without a plan. How do we make sure this doesn't backfire? Sarah asked, her voice low. How do we expose them without getting ourselves killed? Musk rubbed his eyes, feeling the exhaustion begin to settle into his bones. We don't go public right away. We need to gather more intel. Find out who's really pulling the strings. If we make one mistake, we could lose everything. We need allies, Gwyn said. People with resources, people who have the power to fight back. But I can't go to just anyone. Phoenix Horizon has eyes everywhere. Exactly, David agreed. We can't trust anyone who hasn't already been on our side. The last thing we need is a mole in the mix. The silence in the room felt like a weight. There were no easy answers, no guarantees. Every move they made now was critical. One wrong step, and they would find themselves in deeper trouble than they could ever imagine. We'll have to go to ground for a while, Musk said, breaking the silence. We lay low, let things settle, but we stay sharp. We gather more evidence, make connections with the right people. When we're ready, we hit them with everything we've got. David nodded. I can make some calls. I know people who owe me, but they won't act unless we've got undeniable proof. This is a delicate operation. We can't afford to tip our hand. Musk stood up and paced across the room. We'll need to plan our next move carefully. We have the data, but we still don't know the full scope of their operation. We need to dig deeper, find their weaknesses. Gwyn was silent for a moment, her eyes distant as she looked out the window. Finally, she spoke. We're not just fighting for survival here, Musk. We're fighting for the future. We're talking about an organization that could control the fate of the planet. If we fail, everything could change, and not for the better. Musk turned to face her, her words sinking in. He had always understood the importance of what they were doing, but now, more than ever, the weight of it felt almost unbearable. I know, he said softly, but we're in this together. We can't back down. If we expose them, maybe we can stop them. But we have to be smart. Just then, the sound of tires crunching on gravel broke through the quiet, followed by the hum of an engine. The team froze, their bodies tense with sudden alarm. Who the hell is that? David hissed, his hand instinctively moving toward the weapon he had left on the table. Musk motioned for everyone to stay still. The noise grew louder, and then a vehicle pulled up in front of the cabin. The headlights cast long shadows against the trees, cutting through the dark night like a spotlight. Stay quiet, Musk said, his voice low. The door to the cabin creaked open, and a figure stepped into the glow of the headlights. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a worn leather jacket. He was moving cautiously, almost deliberately, as if he knew they were watching. Who the hell is that? Gwyn whispered, her hand resting on the grip of her own weapon. David's eyes narrowed. I don't know, but I'm guessing it's not a friend. Musk held up a hand. Wait. The man walked up to the door and knocked twice. 3 sharp raps, followed by a pause. He wasn't trying to break in. He was waiting for permission. Let's see who it is, Musk said quietly. He moved toward the door, his hand resting on the handle, but he didn't open it yet. He was weighing the options in his mind. A voice came from outside, muffled but clear. I'm here to help. Musk's stomach tightened. This was it. They had nowhere to run. He opened the door, just a crack, peering out at the stranger. What do you want? Musk demanded, his eyes scanning the man's face. The stranger didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled grimly. I think you've been looking for me. The man standing in the doorway didn't look like much, a rugged, weathered figure with the unmistakable air of someone who'd seen far too much of the world. His face was scarred, his eyes sharp and calculating. He was dressed in a dark jacket, the kind that looked like it had been through a few too many close calls. Musk kept his hand on the door, not quite opening it fully. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. His mind raced, trying to gauge the situation. Was this someone from Phoenix Horizon? A rival faction? Or, as he hoped, someone who could help them? What do you want? Musk asked, his voice steady but cautious. The man tilted his head slightly, sizing Musk up. I think you know what I want, he replied coolly. His voice had a quiet authority to it, and it sent a chill down Musk's spine. I'm here to help you. To help all of you. David moved from behind Musk, his eyes narrowing. And why should we trust you? We're already neck-deep in a mess of your making. The man's lips twisted into a wry smile. I didn't make the mess, but I'm the one who's been cleaning it up. There was something about him, something in the way he held himself, that made Musk hesitate. He didn't exude the usual bravado of someone who had just discovered a bunch of strangers in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. Instead, there was an unsettling calm about him, as though he was accustomed to dangerous situations and had learned to handle them with quiet precision. I'm listening, Musk said finally, his voice low but firm. He motioned for the others to lower their weapons. The man took a step closer, still careful, as though he was testing the ground. My name's Jacob, and I've been tracking Phoenix Horizon for years. He paused for a moment, watching Musk's reaction. I've seen the destruction they've caused. I've watched them manipulate the world from the shadows. I know what they're capable of, and I know how dangerous they are. But I also know how to bring them down. A shiver ran through Musk. They weren't the only ones who had been fighting this battle. There were others out there. People who had seen the truth long before they did. The realization hit him hard. The scale of this conspiracy was even larger than he had imagined. "You're with them?" David spat, his tone sharp with suspicion. "Phoenix Horizon? If you think we're just going to trust you, you've got another thing coming." Jacob didn't flinch. He simply shook his head. "I'm not with them. Never was. I'm one of the few who got out alive." Musk studied him closely, searching for any sign of deceit. But there was something about Jacob's demeanor that suggested he wasn't lying. There was no arrogance, no smirk, just a deep, quiet resolve. "I don't get it," Musk said, his voice quiet now. "If you're not with them, then why are you here? What do you want from us?" Jacob glanced over his shoulder, as if ensuring no one was listening in. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I've been tracking them for a long time, and I've learned something crucial that you need to know. They're not just trying to control natural resources, Musk. That's part of it, yes, but they have a bigger goal. They want to control the future." Musk felt a strange sense of dread. What does that mean? "They're experimenting with new technologies. Technologies that could change the world forever," Jacob continued, his eyes now locked on Musk's. "They've been developing methods to manipulate the environment on a massive scale. The wildfires, the floods, the droughts, they're all part of a broader plan to reshape the Earth, to control it, and they'll stop at nothing to make it happen." Musk's mind raced. Everything suddenly felt so much bigger than they had anticipated. What Jacob was describing was far beyond corporate greed. It was an existential threat to the planet itself. They weren't just dealing with an evil corporation. They were dealing with a global force with the power to reshape reality itself. "Why are you telling us this?" David asked, his voice more skeptical than ever. "If you've been tracking them for years, why now? Why come to us?" Jacob exhaled slowly, looking around the room at each of them. "Because you have something they want. That data you've got, Musk, it's not just any file. It's the key to everything. The plans, the research, the key to bringing them down. And I think you're the only ones who can do it." Musk felt a sudden shift in the air around them, like the ground was being pulled out from under him. They had the data, but now it was clear. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for the survival of the planet itself. "We're not the only ones after them, are we?" Gwen said, her voice low but cutting. "You've got other people helping you. People who have been fighting this war in the shadows, too." Jacob's expression hardened. "Yes, there are others. People with resources, people who've seen the truth and have been waiting for someone to take a stand. But we're all scattered. We need to unite our forces. And we need to do it now. If Phoenix Horizon completes their plan, it will be too late. They'll have control of everything." The weight of Jacob's words settled heavily on Musk's shoulders. He wasn't just an inventor anymore, fighting for a new way forward. He was a part of something much bigger. The fate of the world hung in the balance. If they failed, nothing would stop Phoenix Horizon from reshaping the world into something unrecognizable. "I need to know more," Musk said, his voice quiet but determined. "How do we bring them down? What's our next step?" Jacob hesitated, then pulled out a small device from his jacket. It was a portable hard drive, almost identical to the one they had. He slid it across the table to Musk. "This is a backup," Jacob said. "Everything you need to know. All the data, the connections, the information on their plans. But be careful, this is the real reason they're after you. You expose this, and you'll be a target for everything they've got. They won't stop until you're dead." Musk reached for the drive, his fingers tingling as he grasped it. The moment he plugged it in, their lives would change forever. "Let's do it," he said, his voice resolute. Jacob nodded slowly. "I'm in. I'll help you, but you have to promise me one thing. No matter what, you can't let Phoenix Horizon win." Musk didn't need to think twice. "We won't." The weight of their mission settled over them, but this time, Musk felt something different, a spark of hope. They weren't alone, and they weren't backing down. The silence in the cabin felt suffocating. Musk sat at the table, staring at the backup hard drive Jacob had handed him. His fingers hovered over the keys of the laptop, heart racing with anticipation. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. They were no longer just gathering data. Now, they were preparing to launch a counterattack. It was no longer a question of if Phoenix Horizon would retaliate. It was a matter of when. They knew too much now, and their enemies were ruthless. But Musk's resolve had hardened. There was no turning back. "What's our next move?" David asked, breaking the tension. His voice was steady, but the fatigue from their constant running and hiding was evident in his eyes. Musk glanced up at him. "We make contact with the allies Jacob mentioned, but we do it carefully. Phoenix Horizon has eyes everywhere. If they catch wind of this, it could be the end of everything." Gwen, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly spoke up. "And what about the data? What's on that backup drive? Why would they want us dead to get it?" Jacob, who had been standing by the window, turned slowly to face the group. "The data doesn't just show their plans. It's not just about the wildfires, the natural disasters. They've been experimenting with technology that can alter the environment at a global scale. They've developed a way to trigger catastrophic events at will. Earthquakes, tsunamis, you name it." Musk felt a chill run down his spine. "So they could trigger a global crisis and use it to seize power?" Jacob nodded grimly. "Exactly. They plan to destabilize entire countries, manipulate governments, and control the world's resources. With the technology they've developed, they could create a new order. But it comes at a cost. They'll wipe out millions, maybe billions of lives, to get what they want." The gravity of the situation hit Musk hard. This was no longer just about exposure. It wasn't even about survival. They were dealing with a global threat, a force that could reshape the entire planet into something unrecognizable. "We can't let that happen," Musk said, his voice tight with determination. "We can't let them get away with it." Jacob leaned forward. "We won't, but we need help. People in positions of power. We can't do this alone." Musk nodded. "I'll contact some of my most trusted allies. We'll need resources, backup, and an army of people willing to stand up against Phoenix Horizon." "I can help with that," Gwen said, her eyes flashing with determination. "I have contacts in the intelligence community, people who owe me favors. They'll help us. But we have to move quickly." David ran a hand through his hair, his face drawn. "We're running out of time. Phoenix Horizon's reach is far. They won't stop until we're all dead." Jacob's expression hardened. "That's why we need to move faster. We'll split up. Some of us will start laying the groundwork with your contacts. The rest of us will dig deeper into their network. We need to find their weakness before they find ours." The team nodded in agreement. They were no longer just a group of strangers brought together by chance. They were a unified force, determined to take down the global threat looming over them. Musk's mind was already working through their next steps. "We need to hit them where it hurts. If we can expose their operations to the public, we can turn the tide. But we need irrefutable evidence. Something big." "I have a lead," Jacob said, his voice low. "There's a facility in the Arctic, a research station Phoenix Horizon's been using for years. It's where they've been testing some of their most dangerous technologies. If we can get in there, we'll find everything we need to destroy them." Musk's heart skipped a beat. The Arctic? That's a long way to go. It'll be a risky mission. "It's our best shot," Jacob said. "We've got the data, but we need more. We need to find out what they're planning, what they're capable of. The research station is the key." David shook his head. "You're asking us to go to the ends of the earth to fight this war. Do we even know what we're up against there?" "We'll figure it out," Musk replied, his voice calm but firm. "If Phoenix Horizon's involved, they won't be expecting us. That's our advantage." The room fell silent again, as everyone processed the weight of the task ahead. The Arctic mission was dangerous, and it would take them deep into enemy territory. But it was their best chance to uncover the truth and put an end to Phoenix Horizon's plans once and for all. "We'll need gear," Gwen said, already planning ahead. "And we'll need to move quickly. If we wait too long, they'll know we're coming." Musk looked at the team, feeling the weight of their shared mission. "We leave at dawn. We'll get to the facility, gather whatever intel we can, and expose them to the world. This ends now." Jacob stepped forward, pulling a map from his bag and unfurling it on the table. "This is where the research station is located," he said, pointing to a spot on the map. "It's isolated, heavily guarded, but it's not impossible to infiltrate. We'll need a plan, and we'll need to move fast." Musk nodded, studying the map with growing determination. They were about to embark on the most dangerous mission of their lives. They couldn't afford mistakes. They couldn't afford failure. "I'll make the calls," Musk said, standing up from the table. "Gwen, start reaching out to your contacts. David, start organizing our gear. Jacob, help me figure out what we're walking into." The team sprang into action, each member focused on the next step in the mission. But even as they prepared, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Phoenix Horizon had eyes everywhere. They knew who they were, and they were closing in fast. As the team moved into action, Musk couldn't help but feel the looming threat of the storm that was about to break. The world was on the brink of disaster, and they were the only ones who could stop it. But time was running out. The wind howled outside the small jet as it soared over the vast, frozen expanse of the Arctic. Musk sat at the front of the plane, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his thoughts racing. He had always been a visionary, someone who looked to the future with unshakable optimism. But now, as they hurtled toward the most dangerous mission of their lives, the weight of the task ahead pressed on him like a physical force. The facility they were headed to wasn't just a research station. It was a fortress, built in one of the most remote and inhospitable regions on Earth. Phoenix Horizon had been operating there for years, using it as a testing ground for the very technologies that had the potential to reshape the world: catastrophic weather manipulation, geoengineering, and even new methods of environmental warfare. It was a place where the rules didn't apply, a place where they could do anything without oversight. "We're getting close," Jacob said, his voice cutting through Musk's thoughts. The plane was steadily descending toward a snow-covered airstrip hidden from satellite view by the surrounding mountains. Musk turned toward Jacob, who had been eerily calm throughout the flight. For all of their talk about preparing, this was the first time they were truly stepping into the unknown. And yet, Jacob appeared unfazed. Musk couldn't help but wonder about the man's past. He had clearly been involved in something much bigger than this operation. "We'll need to move fast once we land," Jacob continued. "This facility is heavily guarded. Satellite surveillance is their first line of defense. We'll need to disable their security systems before we can even think about getting inside." Gwen was seated next to Musk, flipping through a series of encrypted documents on her tablet. "I've been able to get us some assistance," she said, not looking up from the screen. "One of my contacts in the intelligence community has managed to hack into Phoenix Horizon's satellite network. We'll have a short window where their surveillance systems are down, but it won't last long." David, who had been checking over the weapons and equipment, looked up. "So, what's the plan once we're inside?" Jacob's lips curled into a thin smile. "We go straight for the central lab. That's where they're conducting their most dangerous experiments. If we can get the data, we can expose them." Musk nodded, but doubt still lingered in the back of his mind. "And if they catch us?" Jacob's smile disappeared, replaced by a cold, steely look. "Then we fight." The jet touched down smoothly on the snow-covered runway, and the roar of the engines died down. The team quickly gathered their equipment and prepared to disembark. The cold was immediate and bone-chilling, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the cabin. Musk pulled on his insulated jacket, feeling the icy wind bite at his face as he stepped out onto the tarmac. They were in the middle of nowhere, no civilization for hundreds of miles, only the sprawling white landscape and the distant mountains. Jacob led the way, moving quickly and with purpose. They had no time to waste. Every minute spent in the open made them more vulnerable. The research station's security systems would be down for a short while, but they had no idea when the backup systems would come online. The team moved toward a small, concealed building near the edge of the airstrip. Jacob unlocked a hatch, revealing a hidden tunnel that led beneath the snow and ice. "After you," Jacob said, his tone still calm. The tunnel was narrow and dimly lit, the walls lined with thick layers of insulation to protect it from the freezing cold outside. The air was musty and damp, and Musk's boots crunched against the frozen floor as they made their way deeper into the facility. As they moved through the tunnel, the sense of isolation became even more pronounced. They were alone in this desolate place, surrounded by miles of ice and snow. And yet, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't truly alone. "How far to the lab?" David asked, breaking the silence. "Just a few more minutes," Jacob replied. They reached a large metal door at the end of the tunnel, and Jacob quickly got to work on the security system. He was efficient, his fingers moving with practiced ease as he bypassed the lock. Musk could feel the tension building. This was it. They were about to enter the heart of the enemy's operations. The data they needed was within their reach, but so were the people who would kill to keep it hidden. Ready? Jacob asked, looking at each of them in turn. Gwen nodded. Let's get this over with. With a final click, the door swung open, revealing a long corridor lined with doors that led to various rooms. The lab was just ahead, and Jacob motioned for them to follow. They moved quickly, but carefully. Every step was calculated. They couldn't afford to make a single sound. The facility was supposed to be deserted, but there was always the possibility that someone would be lurking in the shadows. As they neared the lab, Jacob stopped and held up a hand. There's a guard patrol nearby. We'll need to take them out quietly. Musk nodded. The plan had always been to avoid detection, but now it was time to deal with the inevitable. They had come too far to back down now. They took up positions behind some crates, waiting for the guards to come into view. Musk's heart pounded in his chest as the sound of footsteps grew louder. The guards appeared around the corner, and the team moved swiftly, incapacitating them before they could react. With the guards out of the way, they continued toward the lab. The door was heavy, reinforced with metal, but Jacob was already working on it. A few moments later, the lock clicked, and the door swung open. Inside, rows of high-tech equipment and computer terminals lined the walls. The data they needed was somewhere in here. But Musk's eyes were immediately drawn to a large display screen on the far wall. It was showing live data feeds of weather patterns, hurricanes, wildfires, earthquakes, being manipulated in real time. This is it, Jacob said, his voice low but urgent. This is their global control system. Musk moved toward the terminal, plugging in the hard drive they'd brought with them. As the files transferred, he could see the scope of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just about controlling natural resources or manipulating weather. This was about total control of the Earth, of the future, of everyone on it. I've got it, Musk said, his voice tight with tension. We need to get out of here. Now. But as he reached for the door, he heard a sound that froze him in his tracks. Footsteps. Loud, purposeful, and coming closer. The sound of approaching footsteps was no longer just a distant echo. It was right outside the door. Musk's pulse quickened, his mind racing for an escape plan. The data transfer was nearly complete, but they couldn't afford to be caught now. Not when they were so close. Jacob, Musk whispered, his voice tight with urgency. How do we get out of here? Jacob's eyes flicked toward the door, then back at the team. We've got one chance, he said quietly, his voice laced with a calm that belied the danger they were in. There's a ventilation shaft in the next room. It'll lead us to the outside, but we'll have to move fast. Gwen pulled out her gun, checking the clip one last time. How fast? Very fast, Jacob answered. If they're already coming, it's a matter of seconds before they lock down this entire area. We can't afford to be slow. David was already moving, his hand gripping his weapon. Let's go. The door was only inches from opening, but Musk knew they couldn't wait to find out who was on the other side. They had to move now. Everyone to the shaft now, Jacob ordered. The team dashed toward the far wall, where a ventilation grate sat partially hidden behind a row of metal lockers. Jacob was already on it, working with precision to dislodge the grate. It fell to the floor with a soft clang, and without missing a beat, Jacob scrambled inside, his body disappearing into the narrow opening. One by one, the team followed, pulling themselves into the shaft as quickly as possible. Musk was last, taking one last glance at the lab before squeezing into the narrow ventilation tunnel. It smelled of dust and old metal, and the air was thick with tension. They had only moments before Phoenix Horizon's forces descended on them. There was no time for hesitation now. They crawled forward, moving as quickly as they could without making noise. The shaft was cramped and dark, but it was their only escape. Every sound echoed in the narrow tunnel, heightening the urgency of their mission. Musk's heart was pounding in his chest, but he pushed it to the back of his mind. They had to survive this, no matter what. The tunnel twisted and turned, leading them further away from the lab. Jacob's experience was clear. He knew exactly where he was going. They moved in silence, trusting Jacob's guidance. But then, a loud thud rang out behind them. A burst of gunfire echoed through the shaft. "They found us," David shouted, his voice sharp with panic. Jacob didn't falter. "Keep moving. Don't stop." They crawled faster, the sound of pursuing guards growing louder. Musk could hear their footsteps in the tunnel, the sound of their breathing, the rattling of their weapons. They were close. Too close. Gwyn, always the calmest under pressure, turned back to look at Musk. "Keep moving. We're almost there." The ventilation tunnel narrowed even further, and Musk could feel the claustrophobia setting in. His chest tightened, his breath coming in short gasps. But he pushed it aside. Focus. He had to stay focused. They reached a junction in the tunnel, and Jacob paused, listening for a moment. Then, he pointed to the right. "This way. We'll drop down into the storage area. It'll give us cover." The team followed without hesitation, slipping down a narrow hatch into a large storage room. They landed softly on the cold concrete floor, trying to make as little noise as possible. The room was filled with crates and equipment, much of it related to the experimental technologies they had just uncovered in the lab. "Stay low," Jacob whispered, as he scanned the room for exits. "We don't have much time before they realize we've escaped the shaft. We'll have to fight our way out if they come for us." Musk felt the weight of his decisions pressing on him. This was no longer just about gathering data. It was about survival. They were on enemy turf, surrounded by a force far more powerful than anything they had faced before. Phoenix Horizon was everywhere, and they wouldn't hesitate to kill them if it meant keeping their secrets safe. The sound of boots hitting the floor echoed from the hallway outside the storage room. Jacob moved quickly to the nearest door, pushing it open just a crack to peer outside. His face darkened. "They're coming," he said, his voice low. "They've got us cornered." David moved to the other side of the room, taking up a defensive position by a stack of crates. "We can't let them surround us." "We're not going down without a fight," Gwyn said, her voice steady and determined. Musk nodded, taking a deep breath. This was it. They were about to face Phoenix Horizon's full force, and they couldn't afford to hold back. They'd come this far. They had to make it count. Jacob stood, signaling to the team. "Get ready." The door to the storage room slammed open, and armed guards flooded in, weapons drawn. The team opened fire immediately, the sound of gunshots filling the air as they fought back with everything they had. Musk's heart raced as he ducked behind a stack of crates, his hands steady on the trigger. The first guard went down with a sharp cry, but there were more coming, more than he had expected. The air was thick with smoke, and the stench of gunpowder filled his nostrils. "Move," Jacob shouted, signaling for them to retreat toward the far side of the room. "We need to get to the exit." Musk glanced around quickly, spotting a door at the far end of the room. It led to a narrow corridor that, if they were lucky, would lead them to a back exit. But the guards weren't letting up. A loud crash rang out as one of the crates near Musk exploded, sending him tumbling to the ground. Pain shot through his side, but he forced himself to his feet. He couldn't stop now, not when they were so close. "Get to the door," Jacob yelled again, his voice cutting through the chaos. They pushed forward, firing back at the guards as they went. The sound of footsteps grew louder, more intense, but they were almost there. The door was within reach. Musk's pulse pounded in his ears as he sprinted toward the exit. They had to make it. They had to survive. Just as they reached the door, a guard lunged at Musk, grabbing him by the shoulder. He spun around, grabbing the guard's wrist and slamming him into the wall. The guard went down with a grunt, but there was no time to celebrate. "Out! Now!" Gwyn shouted, pulling Musk through the door. They burst into the corridor, barely a second ahead of the guards. Musk's breath came in ragged gasps, but he pushed himself forward. The end of the tunnel was in sight. They were almost out. The narrow corridor stretched ahead of them, its dim lighting casting long shadows on the walls. Musk could hear the distant clamor of more guards rushing to intercept them, their boots pounding against the floor like a drumbeat of impending doom. The team pushed forward, their movements synchronized, driven by a singular, desperate goal: escape. "Keep moving." Jacob urged, his voice sharp with urgency. Gwen was the first to sprint ahead, her eyes scanning every corner, every possible escape route. David followed closely, his rifle raised, ever vigilant. Musk's mind raced as he stumbled to keep up, his breath shallow and his side still aching from the earlier explosion. His thoughts were clouded with adrenaline, but one thing was crystal clear. They couldn't afford to stop. Not for a second. "We're almost there," Jacob said, glancing back. "There's a safe house near the southern perimeter. We can lay low there for a while." "Safe house," Musk said, barely able to hear him over the noise of their fleeing footsteps. "How long will it buy us?" "Long enough to regroup," Jacob replied, his voice grim. "But only if we can get there without them catching up." The tension in the air was palpable, every second feeling like an eternity. The sound of pursuit was getting closer, and Musk could almost feel the heat of their breath on his neck. Phoenix Horizon wasn't just a threat now, they were hunting them. "We'll make it," Gwen said with quiet resolve, glancing back at Musk. Her expression was steely, unflinching. "We have to." Musk nodded, trying to push aside the overwhelming sense of doom that threatened to overwhelm him. There was too much at stake for doubt. Not only was the fate of their lives on the line, but the fate of the world hung in the balance. They had the evidence, the proof that Phoenix Horizon had been manipulating weather systems and triggering natural disasters to seize control. But it was still incomplete. They still had to expose everything. The world needed to know. The corridor twisted and turned, opening up into a small, reinforced door at the end. It was their last obstacle, a heavy security door with multiple locks, all digital. Jacob reached it first, working swiftly with the lockpad. His fingers moved with precision as he typed in the security code, sweat trickling down his forehead. Come on, Jacob muttered, his breath ragged with the effort. Musk watched the hallway behind them, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the presence of the guards getting closer, hear their footsteps reverberating through the metal walls. David shifted his position, his gun raised. "We don't have much time." The digital display on the lockpad flickered and beeped. "Got it," Jacob said, pushing the door open. "Let's go." The team rushed through the doorway into a small, dimly lit room. The safe house was a hidden bunker of sorts, designed to blend into the harsh Arctic landscape. Inside, there was minimal equipment, but it was enough for their immediate needs. There was only one problem. They were far from safe. The door slammed shut behind them, and Jacob quickly activated the security measures, locking them in. "They're right outside," David said, his voice tense. "How long can we stay in here before they break through?" Jacob turned to Musk, his face unreadable. "Not long. The moment they realize we're here, they'll start searching for weaknesses. We can't hide forever." Musk's mind raced. There had to be something they could do. They had to get the data out. They had to let the world know what Phoenix Horizon was planning. "We don't have time for a long stay," Gwen said, glancing at the digital display in the corner of the room. "But we can buy some time." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "How?" "There's an old communication system in the back," Gwen said, already moving toward the rear of the room. "I can use it to send out an encrypted signal. It'll get us some breathing room, give us a chance to escape or prepare for the next move." "Do it," Musk said, his voice low but firm. "We need to move fast. We can't stay in one place for long." As Gwen worked at the system, Musk's thoughts returned to the larger picture. Phoenix Horizon had been operating in the shadows for far too long, manipulating the world's weather, controlling the very environment, and using natural disasters as weapons. It was all part of a calculated effort to reshape the world's power structures, to push governments into submission, to control the global population. But this wasn't just about saving the planet, it was about survival. About taking down an enemy that was bigger, smarter, and more dangerous than anything they had ever faced before. A sharp beep from the communication console brought Musk out of his thoughts. Gwen had managed to send the signal. "They'll get it," she said, standing up from the console. "But now we wait." Jacob turned to the rest of the team. "We need to keep moving. Once we're found, it's game over. We've got maybe an hour before they regroup and come after us. I suggest we use that time wisely." Musk nodded. "I agree. We need to make sure the data gets into the right hands. We've exposed the truth, but we need allies to help us get it to the public. Do we have anyone left? David asked, his voice skeptical. I mean, if Phoenix Horizon is everywhere, who can we trust? There's always someone, Jacob replied. It's just a matter of finding them before Phoenix Horizon does. The silence in the bunker felt heavy. Musk's thoughts lingered on the people who had helped them get this far. The allies, the friends, the ones who had given them the tools they needed to fight back. But even with their help, they were still up against an empire of corruption, greed, and power. Where do we go from here? Gwen asked, breaking the silence. We go to the heart of Phoenix Horizon, Jacob said. We expose their leader, tear down their empire from the inside. They'll try to stop us, but we won't stop. Not now. Musk's jaw tightened. The mission had changed. It was no longer just about survival. It was about bringing the fight to Phoenix Horizon, no matter the cost. They had the power to make a difference, and they had to use it, no matter how dangerous the path ahead was. Let's end this, Musk said, his voice full of resolve. But even as the team prepared for what was to come, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that something much larger was at play. Phoenix Horizon wasn't just an organization. It was a movement, and taking it down would mean confronting something far darker and more powerful than they had ever anticipated. The countdown had begun. The team had no more time to waste. With the encrypted signal sent and their enemies hot on their trail, the safe house was no longer safe. They had no choice but to leave, no matter the cost. Jacob was already preparing for their next move, his face set in grim determination. The clock was ticking, and they were running out of options. Every moment they spent hiding was one moment closer to Phoenix Horizon closing in on them. We need to make our move now, Jacob said, checking his equipment. We know their headquarters are in the Arctic Circle. If we're going to stop them, we need to go straight to the source. Musk looked around the dimly lit room. The cold concrete walls, the bare metal shelves, they were all reminders that they were in a race against time. The weight of the data they carried pressed heavily on him, the knowledge of Phoenix Horizon's manipulations threatening to tear the world apart. But if they could get the truth out, they could end it. They could expose the organization for what it truly was. We don't have a choice, Gwen agreed, already gathering her gear. If we don't stop them now, they'll just keep going. And who knows what they'll do next? David stood by the door, rifle in hand. Then let's move. I don't want to wait around for them to find us. The team moved quickly, exiting the bunker and heading into the frigid, desolate wilderness. The Arctic wind cut through them like knives, but they pressed on, determined. The cold was nothing compared to what they were about to face. As they navigated the harsh terrain, Jacob kept his eyes on the horizon, scanning the sky. They had a lead, a small, remote outpost where Phoenix Horizon was believed to have its primary operations base. It was far from any known civilization, hidden deep in the mountains, surrounded by deadly storms and fortified security. But they couldn't afford to waste any more time. Musk's mind raced as he thought about everything they had learned. The wildfires, the weather manipulation, the rising sea levels. The evidence was undeniable. Phoenix Horizon had been orchestrating global catastrophes for years, all to further its own agenda. And now, they were about to take the fight straight to them. When they reached the edge of the facility, Jacob gave a sharp signal to stop. The outpost loomed ahead, heavily guarded. But there was no turning back. They were already deep inside enemy territory. We go in quiet, Jacob whispered, pulling out a set of night vision goggles. Take out the guards as we go. No noise, no mistakes. The team nodded in unison, and they moved as one, weaving through the shadows and taking out the guards with precision and skill. Musk's heart raced, but he kept his focus, knowing this was their only chance to stop Phoenix Horizon. They made their way into the heart of the base, where the most crucial part of the operation was taking place, the central control room. Inside, they knew, was the core of Phoenix Horizon's operations. The weather control system, the power to manipulate natural disasters and create chaos at will. As they approached the control room, Jacob signaled for them to stop. He motioned for everyone to take positions. The door to the control room was heavily reinforced, but they had to get inside. This was where they could make a real impact, destroy the technology and cripple Phoenix Horizon's ability to manipulate the world. Musk's thoughts flashed back to the first moment he learned about the organization's true intentions. How Phoenix Horizon had manipulated the wildfires in California, how they had engineered floods and hurricanes, all to destabilize governments and seize control. He had seen the devastation firsthand. The families, the communities torn apart. The feeling of helplessness had haunted him for months. But this was their moment to change everything. Jacob whispered, "On my mark, we breached the door. Stay low." We hit them fast. The door cracked open slightly, and through the narrow gap, they could see the control room. Inside, the heart of Phoenix Horizon's operation hummed with life. Massive computers, displays flickering with live data from around the world, earthquakes, storms, floods. A map of global chaos. "There it is," Musk muttered under his breath. "We have to shut it down now," Gwyn said, voice tense. "Ready?" Jacob asked. The team nodded. "Go." With swift efficiency, they stormed the control room, taking out the guards with quick, lethal precision. But inside, a surprise awaited them. The mastermind behind Phoenix Horizon, Catherine Klein, the elusive leader, was standing by the main control panel, her eyes cold and calculating. "So, you found me," Klein said, her voice laced with amusement. "I've been expecting you." Musk's grip tightened on his weapon. "This ends now, Klein. You've manipulated the world long enough. It's time for the truth to come out." Klein's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You think you can stop me? You've only scratched the surface of what we're capable of. Phoenix Horizon is more than just a company. It's a movement, and movements can't be destroyed. You can't stop us." "We'll see about that," Jacob shot back, stepping forward with determination. Klein's eyes flashed dangerously. She hit a button on the control panel, and the screens around them flickered. "You've made a grave mistake," she said, her voice low. "Do you really think you can expose us without consequence?" Before anyone could react, the ground trembled. A loud, guttural rumble filled the room. Musk's stomach dropped. The room's walls began to shake, and a blaring alarm sounded. "They've activated the self-destruct sequence," Gwyn said, panic rising in her voice. "They're going to destroy everything." "Not if I can help it," Jacob said, already moving toward the console. "Get to the exits. I'll take care of this." As the team rushed for the exit, a massive explosion shook the entire facility. The control room was plunged into chaos as sparks flew from the terminals, and the lights flickered. Musk didn't hesitate. He could hear the distant sounds of sirens, the frantic chatter of Phoenix Horizon operatives realizing what was happening. Jacob's voice crackled through his comm. "We've got one shot to escape. Meet me at the rendezvous point in 5 minutes." The team ran through the crumbling corridors, the ground beneath them shaking with each passing second. It was now or never. They had come this far, and they couldn't stop now. The world needed to know the truth. Phoenix Horizon had to be stopped, no matter the cost. As they reached the surface, the air felt sharp, alive with the energy of their escape. Musk looked back toward the now-ruined facility. It was a small victory, but it was enough. Phoenix Horizon was crippled. The truth was out. They had won.